Our program teaches two major concepts: triple ping, lead generation. That's the chase cycle. But this series is about the mastering the art of lead conversion. Chasing is the first cycle. We have 3 more cycles before we ever get paid from the client. The cycles inside of mastering the art of lead conversion are obtaining a commitment, then the communication, for example, with the seller, week over week over week, if the house is not selling, sometimes month over month. What is the communication? What's the series look like? And then lastly, contract to close. What we know in each of these situations, if they're handled incorrectly, the transaction can die. Think of every listing like it's a part-time job. We want to get paid for every part-time job that we take. All you have to do is look in the MLS, your brand or other realtors' brands or just individual agents, and you can see that the office might carry, that particular office only, maybe 100 million closings in a year, whatever their number is. And you see this 100 million, but then you see that there's 170 million in failed listings. The writing's on the wall. Sometimes these offices are going to close, or agents are going to leave because the atmosphere isn't good, because there's not a lot of focus on sometimes selling the inventory that we have. The focus is on going and getting new inventory. My hope is, through the mastering the art of lead conversion, is you're able to take these listings and price them right in the commitment cycle, so we can then go to contract to close cycle. Secondly, we go to the communication cycle, which is week over week, what do we say? And then lastly, we move into contract to close. All through those stages, there are fire starters. And you say, well, who's a fire starter? What's a fire starter? Those are people who cause problems in any of those cycles. That would be the seller, the buyer's agent, you, the listing agent. There's fire starters in all these different transactions. And we're just trying to get through the 3 cycles of lead conversion. But there's a fire starter everywhere you turn, whether it's the title company, the lender, the appraiser, underwriter, surveyor, whatever it turns out to be. Seems like in most transactions there's a fire starter. Well, this is about how to handle those situations in all the stages of lead conversion, because we do not get paid when we convert, for example, the listing. And when agents say to me, I'm great at lead conversion, well, cycle 1, which is obtaining the commitment, but you can see, and there's no line about this, in the MLS, when I see that an agent says, well, I'm great at lead conversion, but I can see that they close 47, maybe 57%, whatever, of the inventory they take. That means they aren't good at lead conversion, just cycle 1, obtaining the commitment. Cycle 2, again, is weekly communication. And this is where most agents lose their business, the opportunity for that part-time job to pay. And that is the weekly communication. They lose the trust with the seller, and the seller doesn't want to talk to them any longer, which is why the seller doesn't return the agent's emails, phone calls, won't take a face-to-face meeting because they don't want to talk about price. So the agents, one of the most important things we can do is take care of the business that we currently have, increase the probability that we get paid on a higher percentage of the transaction. And again, I hear a lot of agents say, well, I sell everything I take. Well, I already have an MLS report that we created that shows us really agent metrics. We can see the probability of a real estate agent. Are they going to close a transaction when they take it based on the historical performances that they've done with other part-time jobs called listings? So it's really easy to assess if you give that agent a listing, what's the probability on that listing interview that they're ever going to sell the property? Because sellers often think the probability is high. Listing my house is going to sell. All we have to do is look at the historical performance of a real estate agent and say, basically, they sell 4 out of every 10, which means they have lower probabilities of selling every part-time job, every listing that they take. Our goal is to equip you that when you're on these listing interviews, you can share with the seller that you're at least 80 to 90% or 100% of listings you take, because quite often the competition isn't selling at that rate. So we're going to unpack the concept called obtaining listing, which is the which is the commitment cycle. And then we're going to walk you through all the parts of communication, week over week, how to get price reductions, how to get extensions, how to do contract negotiations, as well as the last stage is contract to close, the problems we're going to have with fire starters, with appraisals and financing issues or inspection issues. How do we get the buyer and the seller to keep this thing together and not kill the transaction based on principle? So we look forward to going through all those different topics with you. Thanks for listening.